Are we live?
We're live.
Are we live? He says yes. All right. Hello and welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes. If you're finding us for the first time on this platform, know that we come on Thursday nights about 6:15 or a little thereafter to do the YouTube live. This is the portion before the mics go sort of live, a double live.
Live.
Spotify and Apple podcasts and all that kind of stuff. So we are going to be talking about marriage. On the heels of our show last week, Why Do People Struggle So Much to Say No? I kind of thought it was a nice little cheeky way to come into, this with new marriages are just exploding with boundary questions and how to manage the newness of everything, right?
Or having children, new
Oh,
children. We
gosh,
talked
yes.
about that several weeks ago.
Right. Young couples and all that. There's a lot going on in life changes that happen there. So I thought it would be cool to kick that around. The three questions that we'll talk about: how do I envision the balance between independence and togetherness in my new marriage? What are the most important personal boundaries I need to maintain in this new stage of life? And how do I feel about discussing expectations with my partner? And what areas need more clarity between us? Those are provocative, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
Thought-stimulating.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, welcome back. We can't go yet on the information we're going to do during the live show. I guess we do the teaser that you teased me. I'll tease YouTube people with when the live mics go live. John is going to explain to us how he has been lately, which he's been overcoming some stuff, I guess. And you want to talk about a body bag.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
What is going on with the body bag? You have to tune into the show or stick with us, and you'll find out here in a minute. I'm dying to know what happened.
Yeah, I'm dying.
You better not.
So,
Better not. Be careful about your jokes. I care about you, brother.
all right, thank you, bro.
Is it okay to say where you were?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. You were in the hospital, so.
I was in a hospital for 8 days.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a long time, man. That is a long time. All right, Mr. Robinson, whenever you're ready. You ready to fire it up? All right, let's do this. Hello, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes on 10/10/24. I enjoyed writing that date all day today.
I did too.
Isn't it fun?
Yes, it is.
I have weird things about cool dates on my progress notes. Like go 10/10/10/24. Yay, so fun.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm a simple man, Neil.
Well, it was 10/10/10 just 14 years ago.
I don't remember having an affinity for writing down dates on my progress notes then or typing them in. It must have. Maybe it's been a new development. I don't know. But now that we lost half the audience, shall we move on?
We shall move on.
All right, this is 10/10/24. We're going to be talking about boundaries in a new marriage. So this is Through a Therapist's Eyes, where you get insights directly from a panel of therapists in your car or at home. Not the delivery of therapy services in any way. We have the three questions that we're going to be posing today. I want you to think about through the show. How do I envision the balance between independence and togetherness in my new marriage? What are the most important personal boundaries I need to maintain in this new stage of life? And thirdly, how do I feel about discussing expectations with my partner? And what areas need more clarity between us? Provocative questions.
Three very excellent questions because that's what every marriage
Dealing with. Absolutely. In the beginning. John, how many stars are these people supposed to give us?
They're supposed to give us 5 stars, and I'm going to say go twice and give us 10 stars.
Dude, I want you to know how well Victoria did that last week when you were out.
Oh, did she?
Dude, she killed it, didn't she,
she
Neil?
killed it.
Neil's shaking his head emphatically. Oh, my gosh, he's still stopped shaking his head. All right, I'm dramaticizing that a little bit. He stopped. But, yeah, man, she hit it. 5 stars. She got it right.
Good.
She made sure that people know.
And we're not doing this for therapeutic reasons or anything like that.
Fair
for
enough. Delivery of therapy services.
Right.
So subscribe, click the bell, tell somebody about it. We really want to build up the YouTube channel this year with YouTube Lives. So contact throughatherapisteyes.com is the way to email us so we interact with you. It's cool that way. This is the human emotional experience, which we do endeavor to figure out together. I need to start getting serious about bookmarks. marketing and book mentioning because I wrote another book, John.
That's right. And you're supposed to say it 7 times.
7 times?
According to Frank Luntz. Yes, who is does a lot of polling and things like that.
Yeah.
So in other words, you need to name the title 7 times every time that it's like, let's say you do an interview.
Dang.
Yeah.
Through a Therapist's Eyes, Re-Understanding Emotions. No, that's the first volume. I got to get it right. What happens when I screw it up? Do I have to do it twice?
Well,
for
you got 2
screwing
of them.
up?
One's blue eyes and one's green eyes. So,
That was volume 1. Volume 2 is Through a Therapist's Eyes, Re-Understanding Your Marriage and Becoming Your Best as a Spouse, which definitely applies to this particular episode, wouldn't you say?
Yes, definitely, sir. You need to make sure that that's seen on camera.
Yeah, I was just going to... We thought alike. So YouTube, you can see the book now, Through a Therapist's Eyes. It's coming out December 17th. I think it'd be a great... I think it'd be a great Christmas present. But then someone was like, dude, I can't buy my brother a Christmas present about marriage book. Like, what are you doing? What are you talking about?
Are you trying to tell me something?
Exactly. So YouTube Live, you got a good look at the cover.
Yeah.
I think it looks pretty cool. But seriously, I need to get goosed up about this because it is coming fast, and I've just lost track of time. I haven't done a whole lot with it. Hey, Miss Roberts says, or Cass says, greetings, Earthlings. Greeting, Cass. Good to see you back on. So it's just a cool book. Really, volume 2. I already wrote 1, so the second one's always kind of, you know what's kind of going on. And I'm excited about this book project, John. I think it's going to help a lot of people really learn.
Have a deeper understanding. And this, what we're talking about, it's
right on point.
It's right on point.
Yeah. So we will be mentioning it probably a little bit. Probably should have got chapters in there, but I didn't have that much energy for it. But we're going to start off here today with directly some concepts that very much are in the book, and they're about marriage. And I think they're so the platform is so, the foundations need to be understood before we even talk about. That's why I talk about EFT every time we talk about marriage, because I feel like that's so big of a deal. But you have absolutely intrigued me, Mr. John Pope, because you're back. Welcome back.
Right. Thank you.
John Pope is with us. Victoria's out a little bit under the weather, coughing up a lung, it sounded like earlier today. So,
yeah, I didn't want to get what she has.
Yeah, we didn't need you getting nothing, that's for sure, because
I was in the hospital for 8 days.
It's a long time,
That's
brother,
a long
man.
time. And
what he said that he's going to share is something about a body bag, y'all. Like, I'm freaked out.
Yes.
What are you talking about?
Okay, here's what happened. Okay, I wake up, and this was the Thursday, which is when it first started raining so much before Helene. And so I'm like, I can't move. I could barely move. And I went up, of course, to go to the restroom. And the next thing I know is I'm kind of collapsing onto the floor. I can't get up. So I managed to right myself once, and then I headed back to the restroom. And the next thing I know is bang, right onto the floor. Okay.
Ouch.
Yeah, and it's raining outside, cats and dogs and all of that. My wife sees it, and she says, "Oh, my gosh, oh, my goodness." Well, she used different words than that. But so,
We'll leave that out.
So here I am. I'm white as a sheet. I'm perspiring. I am literally sweating buckets. And I say, you need to call EMS, GEMS, basically, for Gaston Emergency Services. Well, I kind of go in and out, and then the next thing
really
I know is
passing in and out.
Yes,
You were checking.
Next few minutes,
Wow.
then I noticed that there's firemen by my bed. I'm in bed, which is good, and they're checking, and the next thing I know is there's EMS guys. Okay, now it's really raining, cats and dogs.
Oh, no.
And they say, we don't want you to get wet.
Oh, my God.
We don't want you. Now,
Did you know this, Neil?
no, there's the fire truck.
What?
There are three EMS vehicles out there. Okay, so I'm going out And I mean, they say, well, we need to take you out and we don't want you to get wet. So they put a tarp over me. And I have people in the neighborhood. You know my neighborhood, Neil. So they're sticking their heads out like this. And they're, and this is what my wife told me that they were doing. I mean, they were just, they wanted to know what was happening.
Yeah, they're concerned about their neighbor, man.
Lights are flashing and all
dramatic.
of that. So I'm in a body bag, basically, or a tarp. It looks like a body bag. And so I end up going to the hospital, and I end up being tested. I had like 63, 64 tests, MRIs, CT scans, with contrast, without contrast, and I was on telemetry, and then I was in isolation for 4 days. Nothing. I'm not infectious.
Yeah,
but I have some form of spinal meningitis.
Right, they're trying to figure it all out.
Trying to figure it out, but they don't quite know.
Right.
Okay. So there you go. I was and so
now I missed the part. Maybe I tuned out for a second. We just got a text and whatever from that we're going to use for the show. So thank you, Adam. Did they use a body bag to cover you from the rain? Is that what the deal is?
Yes.
So it was a legit body bag they placed all over you.
Yes.
But they didn't put you in the body bag.
No, they put it over me.
Okay.
So it's this body bag that's over me. And so they take me in the ambulance, and so I get.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, John, I'm really glad you're with us, brother.
I was the healthiest sick person in that hospital.
That's what they told you.
Yeah.
You pride yourself in your health.
Yeah.
Well, seriously, welcome back. I'm glad you're
Thank you.
doing well. We've spoke several times, this last week or two, a few at least, and I know that was scary. I didn't know the body bag part. But,
yeah.
You're handling
that.
You didn't want to tell me that part, did you? But,
I don't want to do this again.
Okay. Yeah, man. I'm just glad you're doing well. We're
great
here for
doctors. Great doctors.
We're here for you, whatever you need.
Thank you. And nurses.
So
two lumbar punctures.
We've got contribution from the co-host, actually.
Okay, all right.
We've got texts, and he's got an idea for a show, so Adam's all banging. I hope you guys are doing well, Miss Adam and Miss Julie. Miss Adam. I said Miss Adam, didn't I? Mr. Adam. He says, boundaries of a new marriage. Anything that bothered in the previous marriage should be voiced. If you ever thought, I'm not putting up with that again, then it needs to be a boundary. I am curious what you think about that, John.
That's interesting.
Isn't it, though?
Yeah, because I'm thinking that maybe there's a sense, and I don't know if you can say it entirely, because if you're in this new marriage, would that be an issue in the same way?
I think you got to be careful with that a little bit, don't you?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm glad that you sent in that, Adam, because it's an interesting angle I hadn't thought about, and I wasn't going to cover in this episode, but because I'm thinking more first-time new marriages, but we probably need to realize, of course, a lot of people are in their second marriages that are new marriages. And it's an interesting, that's probably a whole show in and of itself, because it's a different flavor for sure than just a new marriage relationship as your first and young love. So, I don't know. I would need to think about it more, but my first reaction is those things might be really just about you and your own.
Well, that's
right. Go ahead. Do you agree?
I agree.
Go a little further.
Well, I'm thinking that might be some of your stuff that you carried on. Maybe the fact is, the reality is that there were difficult things in your first marriage, and the former spouse did not handle it well, or whatever. And so it's not to blame the.
You can't bring that to the new one.
You can't bring that to the new one, or that you have to say that we're beginning again anew.
Yeah.
And
are you new?
Yeah.
That becomes the question, and it's there's some stuff there. I think we need to process that one. That's probably a good show idea.
Yeah.
To spend good time on that. So So let's go. Let's get in here. We've hopefully we need to bang at it. So I do have a book on marriage that I finished. Mentioned it in the opening, and there are some themes in there that I thought are just foundational that I want to make sure that is a part of this conversation, just because I think it's so fundamental. The one is EFT overview. I've gotten good at an elevator version, quick and dirty, so I want to throw it out there so that people can hear that in this session. If you've heard it before, this is a good review. I hope that you've heard it before. If you've listened to any of these shows, I want to hear it. It's so crucial. So, and Gottman's stuff, right? Do you use it a lot? I forget what you said when we did the panel on it.
I don't use him a lot, but I have been using him more because guess what?
What?
You influenced me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the youngster taught me.
I tell you, every dog gets a bone every now and again. It's good stuff, isn't it?
It is good stuff.
It's really, really powerful and absolutely awesome.
I'd been using a lot of Lerner and Satir.
Okay, Virginia Satir is cool.
Yeah.
Well, Gottman came in, and what he did, guys, is he took 1,000 couples or more, 10,000 and whatever, and put them all in the love lab is what he called it, I think. And he put science to it. So he measured everything. And heart rate, blood pressure, tear ducts, whole 9 yards. And what he saw is when people get elevated in some sort of emotional way, he really dialed down on what's going on in this conversation? What's the topic? What are people experiencing? And ultimately, he identified that people are in operation of one of two specific insecurity states. That is, one, abandonment. We mostly know what that is. Feel like fear of being alone, not being respected, that type of thing. But the other one is a fear of engulfment, which is a little bit of a weird insecurity. I had to look it up at first. Engulfed by water or engulfed by flames. You're overrun. You're overtaken by the other person. So a fear of engulfment.
So the boundaries are crossed.
The boundaries are crossed, and you're fearful of being controlled and being criticized and being overwhelmed, overrun. So ultimately, the abandonment stance operates under a model of pursue, and the engulfment stance operates under a model of withdrawal. So you have a pursue-withdrawal pattern that typically happens because you have three possibilities. One is two engulfment people, which is kind of weird. It doesn't happen very often. It's parallel lives. You're not really connected. Two, abandonment people, which is a lot of clash. Love fest when it's good, John, but when it's not, I think we used to call that a high-conflict marriage. Remember that term?
Right.
I think that's what a high-conflict marriage is.
I think so,
people
and
together.
I have worked with people like that, and it's difficult.
I have too. It's very difficult.
It's challenging.
Very difficult. An overwhelming majority of the time, people operate from opposites attract, and you get a pursue-withdrawal pattern where to gain emotional safety.
That's that great Paula Abdul song.
To gain emotional safety, the abandonment person will pursue, want to be close, talk. The engulfment person, to gain emotional safety, we want to pull back and withdraw and shut down and put up walls. And whenever one does their thing, the other person gets triggered. So that's the quick and dirty. Neil, you have a thought?
I'm going to leave a producer note here. He only said engulfment was weird because he's an abandonment person.
Oh, man.
So just so you know, just because you're engulfed doesn't make you weird. Chris just doesn't understand it because he's an abandonment person, just FYI.
What I said was weird, for clarification, producer, is that the withdrawal, two engulfment people together.
No, when you clearly stated that when you were talking about abandonment was one way and engulfment, which is weird, is this way.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I said that because it's a weird. People don't know what engulfment even means, man. Yeah. That's fine. Okay, I'll take it. I'll take that. Nicely done. All right, moving on though. Any comments on that though, John?
No,
yeah.
no. I think that's
so. The golden
succinct.
egg. You asked a question.
Yes. What is the golden egg?
Right. It's in my book, and it's my own concoction of a thought, and I just called it. I probably could have come up with something cooler, but I've always thought of it as the golden egg. And to me, the golden egg really refers to like that space in between two people that is really a kind of a sacred space. Mm-hmm. I mean, what we're creating together in a marriage is dynamic. And what we're really, really trying, which is very, very elusive to get to, is this space that I call a golden egg. It's golden because it's very special. Eggs are kind of special too, I feel like. You know, it represents birth and, you know, a start of
Fertility,
something new.
yeah.
Right, all of that. And so the golden egg, in my mind, refers to the amount of safe space. Emotional safety is crucial. You should see his face on YouTube Live, y'all.
Yeah.
He's going to have to describe the face here in a second, what the face means, because that is such a powerful and elusive and important thing to create, is that emotional safety for one another. And I find that people struggle with that greatly.
Well, and I think they struggle with that over throughout a marriage.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes. And
It's not a one and done space.
And if one does not have a safe space in a family growing up, it's going to affect negatively and impact their partnerships or their marriages
Right.
afterwards when they're in their own relationship with another person, significant other,
Right.
spouse.
That's a very important factor that goes, I mean, that's where therapy kind of comes in. So, yeah, honestly, if you are considering getting married or recently getting married, or you've been married for 20 years and this applies to you, you've had chronic realities in your marriage that very much are related. You know, I'll throw in substance abuse families, especially, because, of course, that's not safe. It's like a torture chamber in some ways. Or even just divorces that have happened, or difficult parents, or family dynamics that really created an experience.
Or
of not
families
feeling
where
safe.
there have been multiple infidelities and that sort of thing, in which there is a marriage, and yet at the same time one spouse brings over the boyfriend or the girlfriend, and the kiddo sees it.
Oh gosh,
The children see that.
right?
Yeah.
What a brain F that is.
Yeah, there's
Truly.
one kid that was sleeping in his bed, and his mother had her lover over, and
Yeah.
Dad didn't know, stepdad didn't know, and stepdad came home, and so the other fellow that she was having an affair with went into bed with him to hide, and that's
Oh God,
yeah,
really? This
Yeah.
is the case you had?
it's a real case.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and little wonder he's having a little trouble with his marriage now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not a shock, because it definitely is going to impact your attachments. Like, how do you cope with these types of things? Yeah, it's powerful. There's a lot of reality there. So, you know, I guess one of the things we're landing on highlighting here through your helping us to understand that, John, is, can we say or extract from that, when you're really looking at a new marriage, a new relationship like that, you've really got to do due diligence in your own psyche, your own emotional attachments previously in life. Do not make the mistake, the complete naivete, thinking that all is in the past and doesn't affect you now. It does.
a lot of times people, unfortunately, they will leave a conflicted household, and will go and get married as soon as they can, find somebody that will take care of them, and in fact they end up in the same spot that they were.
Rushing it along too much, getting your emotional needs met by dating and all of that is definitely not a good idea. In a destructive way, I guess I should say, because obviously you want your partner to meet various needs, of course, but emotional and physical. But yeah, you have to be careful about what those needs are, where they come from,
for
what
them
you're
to
doing.
fill up the emptiness
Yeah.
that they may have.
Yeah, emptiness is not something to have thinking your partner's going to fix that.
Yeah,
It's not going to happen.
that's right.
I think that's a fair statement.
I think it's absolutely a true statement.
It's almost like, if I'm unhappy, I'm going to have a child, and that's going to make me happy. Like, oh my, Emin, no.
I will make you love me.
Right.
So,
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on there with that. Okay. That's been an awesome little unanticipated segment. Very cool. I wanted to highlight expectations, because I feel like we've done a whole show on expectations, and what you'll find with our conversation today is it has a lot to do with boundaries, all kind of boundary issues. It's almost pretty much what we got enough time to highlight, is spend time working with today, talking about the boundary that changes and the boundary developments and all of the things that happen with a new relationship. I mean, the boundaries of a new marriage is the title, but there's so much goes on in a new marriage, like we just took time we're talking about. But it's all about boundaries, I feel like, in the new first part of a relationship. Does that sound clear?
Definitely.
Yeah. And so expectations, we did do a show. Neil, I really should have researched the number for that. If you have a way to see what show that was, that'd be great. On what expectations are, how we deal with them, how that we work with them. And I really feel strongly that I've come to in my work with people fairly recently in my career, honestly, the last few years, believe it or not. I'm really feeling like the only healthy way you can get to have an expectation. Ooh, yeah, I put it that way. Say it again. The only healthy way that you can be allowed to, or that you get to have an expectation of somebody, is when you've had conversations and you've formed agreements.
Right.
You have to have agreements in place.
Yeah.
When you make an agreement together, then you can expect that the agreement is upheld.
So
When
that's
you-
an emotional a covenant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? But when you develop or have an expectation about your partner and you haven't ever even had a conversation or made a staunch agreement about it in specific terms, you're doomed, because the other person might not even know you have this expectation. Right?
Precisely.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
Teetotal and complete mess. And you who are newly married, either second, third, fourth, or first marriage, you're raging with these expectations, and it's dangerous unless you have agreements or long-term norms. And the way I always use an example for that, John, is if we've had brunch on Sunday every week for 73 weeks, here in about 3 days, it's Thursday today, I can expect that we're going to have brunch at 2 o'clock and sit down at the table as Sunday. But that's because we've done it 72 times in a row. So, you can be relatively safe there. But those are the way that we deal with expectations. Make sense? Anything to add?
No.
I know we're flying quick because these are just concepts I wanted to get to. The golden circle is the last one that I have written in the Through a Therapist's Eyes, Re-Understanding Your Marriage and Becoming Your Best as a Spouse. I have to do that 5 more times today?
5 more times.
Really?
Yes.
That's a lot.
People, I swear to you that people will buy your book.
If I say Through a Therapist's Eyes, Re-Understanding Your
Yes.
Marriage and Becoming Your Best as a Spouse.
That's right, because they will know. They will learn that, and they will hear it, and it'll show up.
7 times.
Yeah, and that's not magic. It's just that.
Psychology.
Yeah.
I got to figure out this marketing psychology crap. I say crap because I don't like any of that. Just tell all your friends is my marketing strategy.
Psychology. Psychology.
All right,
So-
the golden circle is in there, and that's another concept that I have kind of created thinking about marriage, and I wrote about it in the book, which really just kind of relates to, like, I think how we want to try to relate circularly with each other, to where we're accepting each other. Boy, is it easy or hard to accept your spouse just as they are?
I think it's very hard.
Sounds good.
It sounds perfect.
Oh, yeah, I do that all the time. You're fine. Just as you are. I love you. Everything about just as you are.
The Billy Joel song.
What's that one?
I love you just the way you are. So
You didn't really sing it, though.
no, I'm
Not going Billy Joel on
not
us.
going to Billy Joel on you.
So you
It's
accept...
all rock and roll to me.
It's another one. So we accept each other, and it's an important part that starts the process. Then we express what we need to express. So you have got to, non-verbally or verbally, by the way, we express a lot of things non-verbally. Might want to get some verbal in there, though, to confirm what you're expressing non-verbally. So, but we accept each other, and then we express, and then we convey. So it isn't just about saying something. You want to get into a place, into a cyclical thing where you're conveying what you're meaning. And so the word convey, what does that mean to you that's different? You might be a better wordsmith than me.
No, convey is in other words, you're able to not just express it, which would be saying this or
This or that, right?
this or that, but convey is actually an active exchange.
It's an exchange. It's
right.
I want to make sure that you understand where I'm at with this. So you're accepting the person, they're accepting you. You're expressing, they're expressing, and we're conveying back and forth. And then we
So
move.
it's like a conveyor belt. So in other words, something's going back. There's sort of an intersection.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
going somewhere.
Somewhere, yeah.
And I want you to get the whole package. Then we receive. So if you're open, you'll receive what's being conveyed, and then you turn back around to acceptance. So the whole circle is accept, express, convey, receive, and you're back to accept. And then you express.
I can accept that.
And you convey. Nicely done.
So
You know what I'm saying, though? I mean, I'm sure you've never heard this because I created this in my head. I'm really curious what you think about this golden circle.
Well, I like that because it's, you know, we usually see circles as sort of a negative thing because you'll say in terms of relapse of substance use.
Yeah, thinking circularly.
Yeah. But in this case, it's sort of an exchange of gifts and receiving of gifts.
It is.
And so it is that conveyor that builds itself. It builds a relationship. It builds history. It builds continuity. It builds strength on strength. And I think that's why you called it a golden circle.
Right.
It's like a golden ring.
That's really cool. Yeah, I hadn't thought about the ring, but you're right.
Yeah,
It's a wedding ring and a circular.
It's eternal.
Eternal. Yep.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you're like,
This
yeah, I love that.
diamond ring.
I love that.
That's right.
So this show shows out on, by the way, episode 290. You know, why do people struggle so much to say no? Victoria and I spent a deep dive on that. It was a good conversation, John, to really highlight, like, that's hard to do. So go back and listen to that one, honestly, and come back to this because they really purposely, on my part, sort of play off on each other in a with specificity to marriage. But saying no to anybody is a difficult thing.
Right.
You out there thinking that's wrong, come on now. Come on. I know you struggle to say no to your kids. I know that you have difficulty when somebody really wants you to do something for you to say no to them. I like to think that I say no well as well. But I know that's psychologically hard, John, right?
It's hard for me.
Yeah.
It's always been hard.
I'd much rather say yes and receive the smile that you're going to give to me than say no to you and receive the
I want to receive
frown.
approbation for what I'm doing and say, yeah, you're a really good guy, John Nelson.
Right?
And, a pat on the back and approval. So you want to be the good guy, but
It's natural.
yeah.
It's like a normal part of living. And I tell you, one of the things I always like to tell new couples now in just my personal life, I'm sitting at a bar, I was talking to somebody having some sushi. And somebody was newly married, and I told him this. I'm like, one of the things that's so important to be able to try to do, kind of playing off the golden egg, is being able to say anything. And I mean that word. I don't use it very often. Being able to say anything to your spouse that you need or want to say. And that's a tough standard. But sometimes you need to be able to say no. And you almost feel like, well, I already tied the knot. I can't tell this person no. When you're newly married, maybe you second and third married people, like, I'm going to tell her no, But there's a weird expectation. I'm supposed to be agreeable to everything that you want, right?
Yeah.
How am I supposed to tell my new husband no? Well, figure it out because you need to.
Well, I'd say about year 2 in our marriage, my wife said no to me sometimes, and I needed to hear no because I needed to be able to actually be aware of her needs. And she grew up in a family where you never said no.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
And so it took a lot of guts for her to say no to me because preacher boy.
Those are always the scary ones,
Yeah,
though, John.
yeah.
You're the ones we have to look out for.
Oh yeah. No, I was.
Come on, give me that chuckle you do.
No.
No.
So
there are some episodes. You got that one by chance yet, Neil?
Which one are we looking for?
Expectations?
In marriage or just expectations?
Just expectations.
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
Okay, because we got episode 288, Resentments Are Marriage Killers. Definitely listen to that one if this show is interesting to you. And then episode 289, The Danger of Losing Yourself, Codependency, Parenting, Caretaking Role. And we talked about marriage burnout, if you remember that, John, right?
Yeah, remember.
Right? The danger of losing yourself is also something very important in these boundaries of a new marriage. You are not, let me tell you, you are not no longer an individual. I know that's a double negative, isn't it?
Well, I understood.
Still an individual person when you become one with the other. The two become one, but you're still two. How about that for a confusing reality, John?
Well, it's as old as the hills. I'm thinking as old as Scripture. It's in Genesis, the second chapter, Genesis. Where you become one flesh,
right?
And so, but then you reveal more of the image of God in that sense, in relationship.
Yeah, but you're still an individual entity.
You're still an individual entity. Yeah, but it's the...
So, John, explain to me, how can the two be one when the two are two and you become one? How are you still two? And while you're at it, why don't you just tell me about how...
Too much!
All right, come on, man. How is there a God, a Jesus, a Holy Spirit, and they're all different entities, the Trinity, and it's all one, but
God
they're all
in three
together?
persons.
Like, what?
You know what I do when I do premarital counseling?
What?
I talk about
Tell them to... never.
And I do it in terms of my perspective. Now, if have a different approach if I'm doing premarital counseling in a secular...
here at the office.
Here in the office. But if it's for a couple from church or something like that, I talk about that they're a reflection of the Trinity, and that God is a triune God, but He also gives us a triune nature in the sense that God is the founder of our relationship, and that we interact with each other and we become more human and more the way we're supposed to be in His image by being in that relationship.
I've thought about that many times.
Yeah.
You eloquently just put that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's pretty deep and important. But let's move on to what are the boundaries in marriage, John? I mean, what are some of the things we're really kind of talking about that are pivotal or important to understand early on in a marriage what the boundaries are that we're dealing with?
I think one of the big problems is people don't necessarily respect their personal space in a marriage. The alone time that even in a marriage you have to have alone time.
You engulfment folks need to be alone.
Yeah. I'm an engulfment person, so engulf and devour. No.
See, no, that's what we do.
That's right.
We tend to say, oh, well, we're together now. We're together every day, all the time, right? Like we're connected at the hip.
Right.
Well, that might be a balance that you come to if both people are agreeable. You know those couples that you never see one without the other, right?
Right.
That might not be the way your spouse wants to live their life. And if
That's
that's
right.
the case, you, sir, need to respect that. Or you, ma'am, need to respect that. Understand, your spouse may need that time to recharge. They may need that time literally away from you so that they can be
that doesn't
closer
mean
to
that
you.
That's right. That's your key, and that is so that you could be more available to the other spouse. When you have that alone time, you recharge your batteries. I'm one of those people that I need an hour to just sort of go and unwind.
And John, that's very
process.
different for me. I don't need an hour. I want to go home, take my armor off. That's my professional clothes. I go put a ball cap on, shorts, and T-shirt. Like, all right, babe, let's go to the deck. I need deck time. I want to talk to you. Like that's
Right.
5 minutes after I get home. That's ideal for me.
That's an hour later for me.
Right.
Yeah.
There are differences with you and your spouse that you need to honor and respect and learn.
But it's good about my spouse, my wife, is that she respects that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always the case.
It may not have been at first, right?
Yeah, no, we had to learn. We had to have some conflict.
Oh,
know?
boy.
Yeah.
Can you have an early marriage without conflict?
I don't think you can have a marriage without.
Can we say if you have an early marriage and you're a year in and you've never really had a major fight or disagreement, that's a problem?
I think that's a problem. I think communication. I will say this, is that one of the things they told us at seminary when in our pastoral counseling courses was that they need to know that you're human and that you're a real couple. And so if you're going to have an argument, throw up your windows so that the people passing by can hear you argue. And of course, you're more careful not to argue loud. But
Yeah.
but part of that was the humanness of that you share each other's wants and desires, and sometimes you don't have an articulate way of expressing it, and so the voice gets raised and the pitch gets higher.
It gets elevated.
Right.
We get triggered. Gottman would say we get into our abandonment stance or
Right.
our engulfment stance, and the cycle starts. Pursue, withdrawal, pursue, withdrawal.
But but healthy marriages are people that they learn that style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of learning.
Uh-huh.
And don't think that you want to move in with each other and do this learning,
Yeah.
or that we've been dating for 4 years and we know this stuff already. Look, when you are day before marriage, I don't care any of the circumstances, and the day after your marriage is completely different.
In my premarital counseling that I've done from religious or secular points of view is that I am amazed at how many people have not ever talked about finances. They haven't, or they actually live together, and so they for time for years and haven't considered some of these things, and they think, well, we're going to get married and it's going to be the same thing. Something there is about marriage, that contract, that covenant. People start thinking differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right about all these different things, parenting, religion, finances is one of the big ones that marriage struggles are wrapped around.
You might find a person that is, let's say, from the Jewish faith or Islamic, or let's say Catholic, or even Protestant, or LDS. And it's interesting. The guy's never been to church in 10 years, 20 years.
Okay.
And as soon as they get married,
Boom.
you need to come to my church.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Do we get to talk about this?
No. Yeah. That's a lot of times. Yeah.
I was going to play it out with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
you have to do exactly what I want.
Right,
Because
yeah.
that's what my church teaches.
And to play
And
that
my
out, like,
family is
I went to a
expecting
different
it.
church.
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to that,
Yeah.
right? Like, how do we manage this?
Uh-huh.
My brother and his wife, I don't think he would mind me saying, they actually go to completely different churches, John.
Uh-huh.
He does the whole Catholic thing, which
Yeah, smells and bells.
Yeah. Yeah. Smells and bells with Catholicism. And she does whatever she does. I don't know what denomination that is. I'm just realizing that. But it's different. I think it's Methodist, but she just goes to her church, he goes to his church, and they're okay with that.
And I've known couples like that.
Yeah.
But they had to make that agreement, and they
Right.
discussed it. And then say, well, how we're going to raise the children. And
Right.
And I think a lot of times people, I think that's one of the areas that is very important that people don't talk about is what are we going to raise the children in? Or where are the children going to go? Where are we going to go for Christmas or Thanksgiving? Whose parents, whose family?
I'm amazed at the family culture realities with holidays in new marriages. dynamic. We've got the holidays coming up. We'll probably talk about that then because we'll revisit that.
My
It's
wife,
a dynamic challenge, isn't it?
yeah, my wife and I are newlyweds of 42 years, and we still argue about that a little bit. Yeah.
Here we go to your dad's, my dad's. No, we're going to the kids. yeah. So the things we covered there: emotional boundaries, physical boundaries, financial boundaries, social boundaries, time boundaries, family boundaries. Actually, I think we nailed them, John, didn't we? Why are these things important? I guess to go a little further on them. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, that I would like to give you another example of time boundaries.
Okay.
Is that the guy thinks of himself as a good old boy. It's a traditional. This is the way I was raised. Dad was out of the home a lot and went to the hunting camp.
Okay.
Know? And the wife says, I need a lot more than that. I want weekends with you and the kids.
You weren't happy with hunting.
Yeah. Well, I brought the kids. I brought one of the kids hunting with me. That's more than that.
Yeah.
You gotta spend that time and listen and communicate. So.
Yeah, and that's a perfectly placed, John. I mean, you know, how many different discussions do we need to have about our activities, our commitments, our, you know, are we committing to the church? What do you mean you're a deacon? That takes up a lot of time. I don't know that I like that idea, right? Like all of these things play into, you know, where's our commitment together? Because it's our commitment.
I've talked to ministers. I mean, I'm a minister, obviously, too, besides being a counselor and educator.
And a podcaster.
And a podcast. I could put that on my resume.
Yeah, you can.
So no. And pastors, well, you know, the wife decides, and this you'll see this more with the men than with female pastors, but men pastors, the wife leaves them, and he never had an affair, anything like that. Well, he had an affair with the church, basically.
Oh, that's where you're going, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, the church was his mistress. And
the commitments that you make are in balance and in concert with your priority sets. Generally speaking, mental health and religious practices align perfectly with God at the top of the list, or, as you taught me, John, a cause greater than yourself.
Yeah.
That's first. Then you're second.
Yeah.
Your spouse is third. The children are fourth. Family is fifth, then friends, then work.
Yeah. So we don't work to live or live to work. It is something that is a gift that we do, and it's necessary, and it can be hard. But if you make work your priority or your mistress, she's going to bite you, or he's going to bite you. He's going to hurt you.
So we've hit a lot of the things that are cool, John. I want to add something to this with common boundary challenges and all this, and then we're going to really spend the last segment on, like, how do we deal with this? But I thought it was interesting. I was doing show prep for this, and I hadn't thought about this, but have you thought about the early marriage boundaries and these things that we're talking about, time and finances and all this kind of stuff? How about digital boundaries?
Yeah.
Right?
Have an emotional affair.
Isn't that a new? Well, I don't know what you mean by that. What do you
digital?
mean?
Are you talking about spending time on gaming, or for example, or I was talking about guys getting or women getting on the phone and having an emotional affair with somebody?
No, I'm thinking a little more broadly than that.
Okay.
Can I say boomer just once? Would that be offensive? Okay, boomer.
Okay, boomer.
You know the phrase. He's not smiling, Neil. I think.
I do.
I pissed him off.
Yeah. Hello, Generation Zero. Generation X.
Yeah, I am.
It's close
X.
to the end. I'm in a B's. At least I'm not an. I wish I were an alpha. But
that's some. Oh my gosh, who's going to be Gen Alpha?
I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
because we're at the end of the alphabet.
Yeah, that's a reserved name for something special, man.
Yeah.
That must be after
I
Jesus
think
back.
There was a Mountain Dew commercial that said Generation X or Generation Yes. And so that was in the 80s. And so we ran out of alphabet letters.
So now we're just trying to piss each other off, I guess.
So tell me, Boomer.
Tell me, Xer.
Xer.
All right, so there's a lot to this, honestly, John, and you've seen this in battles and conflicts and whatnot with marriages, if you think about. Is it okay for me to look at your phone?
Yes, I get that all the time.
Right?
Yeah.
Should I have a little dot on my screen and know where you're at all times? Can we share our location?
My wife and I would absolutely go ape. I was going to use an S word.
8S.
Yes.
Right? Is it okay, John, if I take your picture and put it all over my social media?
No.
Is it okay if I digitally connect into it? Yeah, right. Like there's a lot of factors with digital boundaries, how technology impacts boundaries, including social media use, phone privacy, online communication, creating agreements on what's shared publicly versus what remains private. Like there's a whole new pressure point for marriages nowadays, man. Social media, digital boundaries.
But
I never thought of this before.
Well, Generation Xer. So this is millennial stuff, huh?
Yeah.
And Gen Zers.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the issue is who are you married to? Are you married to your spouse? Are you married to your social media?
You know what I just realized would be dynamic? Like, you know how people go way down in age, in midlife, you date someone that's like, 27 or something like that. Can you imagine the digital communication between somebody who's like 55 and 32? Like,
generation gap. Yeah.
Massive gap there. I wouldn't even know how to have that conversation. Be like, you want to do what with that? Our money is going to be on Zelle, Zip, Zap? Like, no. I don't know what you're talking about. Digital boundaries.
My mother still uses checks. And
I do.
Yeah, I use them occasionally. I use checks occasionally.
I'm a check guy, man. I like checks. I love checks. My kid was making fun of me. I'm like, look. And then he had to write a check for his apartment thing. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Like, see, checks are used.
Yeah, people don't know how to write checks now.
Okay, we need to get to the how do we apply this stuff? How do we manage these boundaries? So what are practical steps? Like what are the things? What do you kind of talk about, John, when people are trying to traverse new relationships and how to do this?
Oh, well.
How do we do this boundary setting in a new marriage, John? Please.
I think one of it is that you have to be able to say, let's talk about this, and that you go to a neutral place, a place that's comfortable for both of you. And that could be going to a restaurant or something of this sort, or sort of like out of the way, kind of romantic, that sort of thing, but you feel like comfortable that you're not going to get into an argument about it and that you discuss it.
So those are some specific strategies. Can I go back before that? Because I'm going to suggest that we look at managing this relationship by setting foundational things that are in place that are really important.
Yeah.
You're talking about some strategies, which is great. But I want to say, before we even get to the place of those strategies, understand that it's your responsibility, sir, to handle your abandonment insecurity state that is inside you. Ma'am, it is your responsibility to deal with the engulfment state that is internal to you. And we end up blaming the other person because they trigger our fears and feelings, and it's your responsibility to handle that.
Before I do a marriage, and if I get the idea and the feeling that, or sense that, it's usually the guy, doesn't want to come in and talk, then I'm going to say, this is you're headed for trouble, okay, in terms of the relationship. Is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would suggest it's not gendered, though. I really, truly believe that people that come in and are wanting to talk to you are wide open with are generally abandonment folks. The woman can be in the engulfment stance just as much as the dude.
Definitely.
In fact, I'm curious, because you've mentioned that on the show many times, or at least several. How many times can you think of the woman that has said, I don't want to go into that talking thing? Why would we go see the preacher guy?
I see that with the woman that wants to have absolutely 100% control in terms of the planning of the wedding and just that real sense of control issues.
Engulfment.
Yeah.
So you do see women
Yeah.
that
I do
don't
see women
that
yeah.
don't want to come to
yeah.
your premarital religious chat.
Yeah. It's something to get over. So in other words, it's traditional. And so they'll do that, but they're not engaged.
I'll tell you a second thing
I
that
think
I
if
like
a
to,
person does their homework,
yeah,
and they do their homework, and they both do their homework, then I know they're engaged.
okay. Oh, I see what you're saying when you're working with them and whatnot. Here's another really important thing that goes back before the strategies as well. So dealing with the expectations also, by the way. I mean, look at the first segment. Get into the golden circle, the golden egg. Ask yourself the question, my fiance, and if you're working on that and you're learning about that, then you're going to set up all kinds of boundaries and strategies and conversations and connections that get these things in place way before you have trouble with them later on down the road.
And I'm thinking that if you do this proactively, and so you don't overwhelm the other the other partner with this, and that you both say, okay, we're going to do this, and if we get stuck, we can come back and revisit it later. And so in other words, you actually come at it as equals and as
Very equal,
completely equal. And that's ultimate.
Well, John, they say I have to honor my husband and follow his word. We probably shouldn't go into that because that'll take too much time.
I will counter that St. Paul says that husbands, you need to love your spouse, and the same is not true of what Paul says for the wife, the female. And so I'd say that both submit to one another and submit to each other in love as Christ submits.
Right. Yeah. I knew we can go off on a cliff.
I'm
with
sorry.
That. No, that's fine. In this list of things that I created or developed, I really want to highlight, like, dramatically, if I could. And be honest with you, I don't even know if it's in my marriage book. I think it is somewhere, but I need to get this title of the chapter in my brain as I start talking about through a therapist's eyes, re-understanding your marriage and becoming your best as a spouse. I don't think I could do it 4 more times, John.
Yeah,
We don't have a lot of time left today.
Yeah.
But I got it in there that time because in there somewhere I need to find the chapter where
you only have to do 3 more times.
A really, really important concept, as well as the emotional safety. How can I be an emotionally safe person for my fiance or new spouse? How can I develop expectations appropriately together? How can I get into a golden circle, right? So another huge one is not taking things personally, right? It's another YouTube look. You should see John's face.
Yeah. When somebody gets very defensive, their senses are heightened, but they are expecting the worst, or they will be projecting the worst.
There's an important word, projecting. Hey.
Yeah. That's a little jargon, but in other words, they're forecasting. They're basically saying, I expect this to go bad.
Right. Or their fear is in charge and the insecurities are in charge, and we expect this to go bad because it always has, always does, always will. Danger, word, danger, danger, always. Like, that's not the case. That's your fear speaking. Yeah. So it's hard to not take things personally, but a really important facet of trying to get these boundaries kind of put into place. Your spouse needs time alone. John just told you. He needs an hour. Why would you think that to be anything about you? Right?
Yeah.
This is what your spouse is telling you that they're needing to do. They've been living their life all this time. They know how to take care of themselves to some extent, at least hopefully, and they're telling you this. They're not telling you that they want to be away from you. They're not telling you that you stress them out, so they need to build up to be able to tolerate you. They're not telling you any of these types of fears and thoughts. They're just saying, I know myself.
You know what gives me comfort is that sometimes my wife and I don't always talk, and we
Mhm.
just sit. And I
Isn't that
always
silence awesome?
silence is golden in that sense. I feel accepted, unconditionally loved
Right.
at those moments.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now there's moments I don't, and
Yeah,
I have to
you
dodge.
to.
No,
You're dodging stuff, yes.
Dodging stuff. No, she never does that. But there is that sense that must be what heaven's like, because it's not boring. It's not like I'm having to think about having a distress or finding something wrong. And even if there's something going on,
It's the golden egg, John.
yeah, it's a golden egg. Yeah, it's a safe space. It's a
Golden egg.
You said sacred earlier.
Sacred,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a sacred space.
Yeah. I think so. So let's kind of get into a little bit more on what are some of the specifics. You went into some practical things. You know, when you look at setting these boundaries up, how do you go about setting these? You know, we've talked about the expectations a little bit, but there's a specificity that we want, and there's a clarity. Remember that golden circle. So you want to be clear, you want to communicate, you want to be specific, you want to understand. Well, that's what the golden circle is about when
Yeah.
you're conveying things.
Yeah.
You're not just expressing or telling. You're not saying, "Hey, my first marriage, this
This
was
is my
terrible."
truth.
Oh boy,
So,
that's what
yeah.
that's what they like to say nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're talking about these things. You're clarifying. You're needing to be clear and convey and specifically get into details.
You're
right?
showing vulnerability, because if somebody says this is my truth, well, you're not allowing yourself vulnerability as well. And that's my thought.
What do you mean by that? Go more there.
Well, if you're sure of you're imposing your beliefs or your thoughts on your spouse, your significant other, then that spouse is not that person is diminished that hears that. I'm an old guy, I'm a boomer.
Right.
So as a boomer, I just I want to be able to respect. I want to be able to hear with respect what someone has to say to me. But I want it done in a loving and caring way.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, which
wanna
is
have
interesting that you say it that way, because one of the things I would suggest, it leads me to go to this, the idea that boundaries, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have conflict. How about the idea that you really set up boundaries around how we'll deal with conflict? In premarital counseling, if you're a premarital therapist and you haven't talked about conflict and setting up boundaries about how the couple will deal with this, you have failed. I will make that bold statement.
Yeah. Oh,
You have failed. You have not done a good enough job. Because you need to talk about conflict. You need to talk about how we will do this. And you'll be more prepared. And you're still going to fluddle through it, by the way. But still, we want to set that up in advance, anticipating or knowing that we're going to need that.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to fight? How do we disagree? How do we manage this together? Well, in my family, we just yell. We get loud. And I'm telling you, that's the way I deal with stuff. Okay, well, if that's the way she operates too, sir, well, that'll work. If that is not the way that she works, man, you can't do that.
right. Exactly.
So we have to have understandings about how are we going to deal with things and what happens for you when you do this. Like if you talk about how we talk about things way more than talking about problems, we're way better off. And I said that as a very young therapist, to be honest with you. That's an oldie but a goodie in my
It
brain,
is good.
right?
Yeah.
If we talk about how to talk about things way more than talking about
So
things,
what
we're
I'm
better
hearing
off.
too is to have flexible boundaries.
Flexibility is a huge thing we
Yeah.
got to mention, right?
Right. So in other words, sometimes it hits the fan, and sometimes we have a boundary, but you might have to let it stretch a little bit.
You know,
It's,
I loved the stage of meeting my first wife there and getting together with the idea of so when we got married, I played a game, and I was like constantly asking her like, okay, did I score points there? The toilet paper is up on the top instead of on the bottom. Like, did I
Right.
score points?
Yeah.
So I made it into a fun game, learning all of these things. Like, how does this go? How does that go? What do you? And it was a fun thing, man. I scored a lot of points, but I got a lot of points taken off, John.
I got a lot of demerits too.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm at 0 now or not, but
With my wife, and I'm sure with Neil, this is also can be true, is that sometimes there are times when you can't figure out what the spouse wants, and you can't, because it might be something, and you'll go immediately to thinking it's you, and it's not necessarily.
right.
Yeah. So I don't know, but
All right, we need to taxi in for a landing a little bit. What are we missing? Because I know we need to have to say more about this. Mutuality. The respect that you need to have.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to respect your spouse,
yeah,
people,
you
Truly.
got to. Yeah.
and how they interpret and perceive respect is important to understand to convey that you respect the other person, right?
Right. So it would be something. I have met with somebody that he says, well, I want to marry this type of person, an Asian person, because they're more an Asian female, because they're more submissive. And I'm
Okay.
going. I
Right.
said, dude, you're not wanting a marriage. You yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
First of all, you can't say it, even
Yeah.
if you think it. Like, what are you thinking? But you can't say it. Yeah, that's danger.
It is danger because he has expectations that are absolutely
Back to expectations.
unrealistic.
But you know what we didn't talk about before we get off the air here that we need to?
What?
Sex. Sexuality.
What's that?
Affection.
Yeah.
This creates major, major troubles. And when your partner is just not wanting to be sexual, and then you're taking it personally, and you lose.
Well,
it
you
can
know,
go
there could
haywire.
be physiologic issue. It could be hormones. It could be all sorts of things. Somebody it shows a lack of interest.
Yeah.
It could also be the person is highly stressed, and the other person's highly sexed.
Right.
Yes, and so there has to be some compromise and understanding of
You
that.
need to have an understanding.
Right.
And compromises. I mean, obviously, you just don't have
So
sex.
so
and become
then when
sexual.
somebody says that, and this is working with some couples too, is that the person says, "Well, I'm not interested in sex, and I won't hear it about it," and that I'm just not interested anymore.
Yep.
Well, I'm 45 and I'm not interested. Well, that can be a problem.
Yeah,
But,
it is a problem.
But I think that person needs to say, okay, I need to find out why I'm this way. And it's not just normal. It's not just hormones. It's not change of life necessarily.
And that can also, I want to say, John, be worked out.
Mhm. It can be. Anything can be worked out in that sense.
Right. There's different ways to express affection, and sex isn't. I mean, sometimes people get to the point where they can't have sex, being quadriplegic or whatever. I always love to talk about Christopher Reeve in this way, where he, fell off the horse and became quadriplegic. And I remember seeing them on Oprah when I was a kid. It was long ago. Maybe I was
Yeah,
in college.
she was very. Yeah.
Did you see that? You know what
Yes,
I'm
I
talking about?
did. Yeah.
Okay, right. Very cool, right?
Yeah.
He's like, we learned ways to manage this. Now, at first, he was depressed and he was suicidal, and he really had to heal himself and grow to accept his body now not being able to move. But they became sexual. They figured out how to be affectionate, how to operate.
I have a colleague, a teaching colleague at another place. He's at another school now, and he is a quad and quadriplegic, and his wife and he married him for the first time, and she for the second. They have a very loving and very sexual relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
It's possible.
it's possible.
All right. I know we went a little long today because I didn't want to rush the part and segment of how do we really do this. I hope that we've given you some ideas on what some pitfalls are, what are some foundational realities, what boundary areas and things need to be addressed, and then really how to do that, because this is a dynamic, ever-evolving thing that doesn't stop either year 5 of the marriage or 15 or 23, right?
So you, in other words, you envision boundaries of being able to be in a relationship where the boundaries are flexible, that they're also, you can make new boundaries, you can and change and negotiate, and you can do this throughout the marriage.
I'm going to let you take this for what it's worth, and let your brain do with it whatever you want to. You, the listener, you, John, as well. And we'll do a mic drop, and we'll see you next week. So, the boundaries of our marriage was very different, before we had kids, and then after we had kids, and before we became empty nesters, and after we became empty nesters. You do with that whatever you want.
I didn't think that our marriage could be as good as it was after we had, after they left the nest.
Yeah.
And it got better.
Yeah. Hang tough. You can do it. That's one of the ways that I end, through a therapist's eyes, re-understanding your marriage and becoming your best spouse, is at the end a touching chapter where somebody taught me their attitude was very much like, look, I said my vows and I meant it, and a second ending to the book.
I think you need to buy Through a Therapist's Eyes, re-understanding your marriage and becoming your best as a spouse.
Thank you, John. Man, and a second touching chapter that we ended on is you can do it. And so, this is a dynamic relationship that starts out and that you've started or are embarking upon, and we wish you the best with it. We want to come along with you to help you understand some things and traverse what is a dynamic but beautiful and fun relationship that you'll have, hopefully, for the rest of